Hello, and welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis. With me, as always, is Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Hollis.
We are sticking with our sci-fi theme. I feel that there's still some more meat on that bone before we hop to another genre. This is, I would say, a sci-fi horror film, wouldn't you?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And it is called No One Will Save You. It's from 2023. It was written, directed, and produced by Brian Duffield. And Brian Duffield, I don't know if you realize this, has had an awful lot of films produced that he wrote, one of which I loved from, I think, 2017 called The Babysitter. Did you see that?
I don't think I did.
Oh, great. We may do it on the podcast in the future, but it's a horror film all about this gorgeous babysitter and hijinks ensue. Anyway, No One Will Save You features Kaitlyn Dever as the star of the film. And it's almost, yay, we love her from Booksmart.
Yes.
It's pretty much a one-hander. It's a very solitary film, a lonely film. I just really was taken with today's film when I first saw it, and I really loved this film. Before we hop into the film, is there something about today's fit you want to tell us about?
Pretty simple. Pan Am, the original Blue Globe. I think they're still running the same logo.
Pan Am t-shirt. Yeah, I love that logo. Pan Am disappeared. I don't know if you know this. My father worked for Pan Am.
I did not know that.
He was a dispatcher in the tower for Pan Am. When I grew up, I still have, hang on a second. Why would I say it when I can show it? Hang on. I did not know you were going to wear that shirt today, correct?
Correct.
Here is an official Pan Am stapler.
Oh, what a
from
great
the glory
item.
days of Pan Am that my dad had in the garage.
It doesn't surprise me that it's particularly nicely designed. It's,
it is very
white
subtle.
and chrome.
Yeah. And I grew up and there were all kinds of manuals and booklets around. I hung on to them and would put all my writing inside of them. And they're gorgeous as well. Remind me to show you sometime. But yeah, he worked for them. They kept laying him off and eventually went out of business, which is when he went to work for the city. But anyway, Pan Am is one of the most beautiful logos ever designed.
It really stood the test of time.
Yeah.
In fact, it's like has a resurgence. This shirt is not old. There's all kinds of stuff available now with the Pan Am logo on it.
Our beloved friend Greg Hoy of Greg Hoy and the Boys.
Ah, yes.
I believe his drum riser, the kick drum design, has a Pan Am logo.
Oh, that's
inspiration.
Great.
Yeah.
See, if I walked into a place where a band was playing and I saw that, I'd be like, oh, let's hang around. I want to hear.
You want to hear that band.
Mm-hmm.
And I am rocking the PCG WGBH Boston tribute shirt.
That's right.
Available at the link below, designed by Dave, and really nice fit, soft. So back to the movie. No One Will Save You, 2023. Excellent film. It was made specifically for Hulu. It debuted in September of last year. And I wanted to cover this because I think it's one of those films that made a bit of a noise when it debuted, but because it was streaming, I think some people missed it and may have slept on it. And I really wanted to sing its praises because it's a bizarre little film and it stays with you. I've been thinking about it ever since I saw it, and so I wanted to talk about it. What were your initial thoughts upon watching it, and what were your thoughts after watching it?
Well, for one thing, I'd never heard of it. I'd never seen any hint of it. And it was a bizarre film. I could say that it's one of the most unique films I've seen because it's just in a couple of criteria, it's unlike any other film I've seen. Mm-hmm. I could say that it stands out more than any film I've ever seen because of the fact that there are 8 words of dialogue or something like that.
I was going to
Yeah,
say, at what point in the film did you realize you haven't heard any dialogue yet? How deep in did you get?
pretty deep. But
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it,
Hmm.
is I wasn't missing. It's not like, how come no one's saying anything? There's not. It's full of scenes where no one would really say anything,
Right.
or in this particular situation, no one would say anything. So that was one of the beauties of it, is that at no point was I like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. No one's going to say anything.
Right.
I never felt like that. It felt like this actress, the person she's playing, doesn't talk to herself. More of a writer, and so I was well into it when I was like, okay, they've made it this far. They're probably not going to say anything.
Kaitlyn Dever plays a character named Bryn. She exists like so many of us today, cut off from everyone. It's the perfect post-pandemic film, really. She operates, it seems to me, in Etsy store or something where she
It's perfect.
makes and sells vintage clothing.
Her Etsy
Um,
business is part of her isolation.
yes. And, I mentioned this is a perfect post-pandemic film. Pre-pandemic, if this is made, I don't know if the film speaks to as many people as it does now. The new normal is on display, but you get a sense after a while that her isolation is not like our isolation. She's more ostracized. She lives alone. Her mother is dead. We see her grave. She seems to be her only friend is her deceased mother. She
Mhm.
she visits the grave. Given the years on the stone, too, I could have been Kaitlyn Dever's parent. Uh, I've aged into that bracket, but there's something off. We get hints of some sort of previous trauma between her and the townsfolk, especially when we see her duck down to avoid a policeman who's walking with his love interest. Um, it's a very lonely character study. She teaches
Mhm.
herself to dance in her house alone with steps on the floor, but as preparation for a dance with who? Nothing about her denotes that she'll ever have a dance partner. And even the house, how cool is that house? It's alone in the woods in a little clearing, and it's so bucolic and serene, but at the same time, it's spooky and remote. You
Mhm.
know, it's really an eerie setting.
In the pandemic era, if you lived in that house, you might go to town. And when you went to town, you'd have some interactions. Then you maybe didn't have interactions for a week and a half, or a month, depending on how seriously you were taking it. So she's going to town with high tension and kind of hoping she doesn't see anyone.
Yeah.
Uh, because she's disliked throughout the town. I mean, this all unravels as you're not unravels, but this all gets explained as the movie goes on. And she practices the smile that she's going to give the townspeople in hopes that maybe they'll eventually warm up to her or something.
Hmm.
She's such a positive character in that three-quarters of the way through the movie. I was like, the alternate title to this movie should be I Was Fucking 12.
Yeah. Yeah. When
Because,
you see the
yeah,
film, you'll get the reference.
yeah,
It's totally like, yeah, give her a break.
yeah, give the girl a break. But it all ties together to make the lack of dialogue 100% plausible.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it also gives you the opportunity to root for her. Everyone's being a jerk to her. She's being perfectly nice. So she's a very well established good guy.
Yeah. At first, I thought, okay, she's somewhere on the spectrum. She has trouble. She has social anxiety. And then when you see her interaction or lack of interaction with the town, you start to realize there's more at play here.
Mhm.
And eventually, when you find out what happened, you're just like, oh, Jesus. Like it's, the title of the film makes perfect sense to you when you see her try and get help at a police station. And a woman, who I assume is her dead friend's mother, spits in her face.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, no one's going to save you. This film has elements of other films.
Does
There's
it?
elements. Yeah, you think
Yeah.
but they're disparate. There are elements of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, as far as
Mhm.
everyone but her being infected and infected townsfolk being used against her. It's also got elements of that Twilight Zone story, The Invaders, where like Agnes Moorehead plays this old woman who lives alone in a secluded house and she's invaded by like spacemen. It's got elements of Signs as far as the aliens and how they're shown and not shown and appear and their build. It's got elements of The Birds and Night of the Living Dead as far as the whole hammering closed windows and doors to
Mhm.
secure the house. It's got elements of all these things.
Close Encounters as well.
Close Encounters as well. Also, I should say, of Super 8, the J.J. Abrams film,
Yeah, yeah.
where once the aliens kind of get inside her mind, there's a bonding, a weird bonding that happens and a form of closure that happens. So it's got elements of all these things. It cherry picks from all these things. And yet, Dave, you never feel that this is a ripoff of another film. It's very much its own unique story. And that's a victory.
Yeah, it was important that it be a one-hander, as you say, and it
Mm-hmm.
was important that there be no dialogue because it needed a couple of things that would set it apart from the things it was borrowing from, because it borrows like crazy. Poltergeist, it borrows from Poltergeist. It
Mm.
borrows like you got the television screen doing weird things. It borrows things that I actually dislike, in some cases, like demons and aliens. Whenever they come somewhere to bother someone, they just love going ape on like doors, cabinet doors, refrigerator doors, just opening them, closing them, and turning lights on and off. It's just,
Mm,
I, and it's so funny because it's a necessity. Like,
right.
there's only so many things you can do. You can have stuff fly around the room. If things turn on and off, if anything moves, you start moving it around. Um, but I, I don't know. I'm usually like, what's with the cabinets? Why do you open and close and slam? And it's like, I don't know. It's a weird thing. They seem to be coming in to look around. They seem to be coming in to look for people. And they're sneaking around, and yet they're being incredibly loud and invasive. But how could I possibly know what the aliens are going for?
Well, you know what? I think that's when you kind of reach the horror aspect of this film. It's a horror film. And so I'd rather have an alien hearing an alien footsteps approaching, hearing an alien chittering,
Mm,
hearing and seeing cabinet doors and refrigerator doors opening and closing. You know, those are creaking doors in a horror film. Those are cat
mm,
scares. Those are, things that go bump in the night. It's horror aspects because it has to unfold slowly. The first hint we get, I think, is very early on. She leaves her house to go run errands, and there's like a little tiny crop circle.
mhm.
And what does
Yeah,
she do? She grabs the hose and she kind of, that's weird. And she
yeah.
waters it and then leaves. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I like the little trail of breadcrumbs opening to it.
But once you get to the end of the trail of breadcrumbs,
Hmm.
that's another beauty of this is this because people love to be like, oh, it's amazing what they do with showing so little. Oh, there's only 4 seconds of alien. This is once you know what we're dealing with, they just it's
Yes.
wonderful. It's
I
close-ups of aliens, different
love it.
kinds of aliens,
Yeah.
alien
Oh,
head tilts, alien emotion.
Dave, the big Jack Skellington spider legged alien is my favorite.
Yeah, semaphore alien.
Yeah. Daddy long legs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
that was a great idea to have there's like a small sort of animalistic alien who has really big arms and hands. There's
Hmm.
that giant stilts sort of daddy long legs alien, and then there's the sort of smooth and
The
high
Greys, as they're
yeah, the
known,
higher
sort of.
intelligent grays. And there's a great moment where she's sneaking up on one of those grays, and he behind his back just does like a two finger like go away, and she
Hmm.
goes through a wall.
And you know
Um,
that they would have preferred to just not have them do the hand thing because it's all telepathy. But how
mm,
do you show audiences the alien is doing it? You know, I would have
y-
had him subtly turn his head and then it
mm,
happened. But, you know, you really have to kind of, audiences today, you have to show them stuff.
I kind of
But it
like the
was,
finger flip. It was like, bye bye, just a
yeah, I
little
guess it was
flick.
more subtle than a Darth Vader reaching out.
There's actually like
Um,
a fourth incarnation of the alien, which is the one you never see, which I think is like there's like an overlord or something. Because
mm,
all of these three types of aliens are all working in concert and basically looking when you're on the ship, they look up to the ceiling like, huh?
mhm.
Any good?
Yeah,
You like?
right.
Keep.
And there's that disgusting, gross stuff
Oh,
in her
right.
mouth
Yeah, there's that
that's
too.
gonna take her over, that has like
Yeesh.
tendrils and thorns. The one thing, and the reason that this movie holds your attention so long is obviously Kaitlyn Dever's a great actress, but her storyline, like she is formidable. She kicks considerable ass. They have to
Mhm.
bring the mothership into this in order to get anywhere fighting her,
Yeah,
you
she's got a
know?
body count halfway through the movie.
She does.
Like you first you're like, "Okay, so she got lucky on the first one." And then you're like, "Oh, she got another one. Oh, she got another one."
Yeah.
She is uh, Jamie Curtising. What was Jamie Curtis's name in Halloween?
Laurie
Um,
Strode.
yeah, she's like
Yeah.
Laurie Strode meets
She strode through this film. Mm.
but also Home Alone. She's home and alone in the situation too. She's boiling the water.
Yeah.
Um, she's fortifying the house, hammering stuff up.
Right.
Uh, I have to say that little tendril through the mouth thing. When I first was getting wind of that, I was confused. I thought maybe that was the alien that was causing all the trouble, and that the Greys were victims of it. And
Oh,
now it
wow.
was being transported to the humans through the Greys.
Uh, that's a great sequel that
Uh,
has elements of Alien, and I love it.
Yeah, it felt like they might be hinting to the fact that while it seems like all these gray like aliens are doing all these things, they may just be
The unwitting
controlled. Yeah,
accomplices.
yeah. But after a while, I started to say, "Oh, actually, I think it's a tool of theirs. It's a tool they use."
Right. When I've had nightmares about aliens, it usually is the Greys. It's being abducted and it's being kind of face to face with them, those big black eyes. And
Mhm.
this film milks that. There's nothing worse than not being able to run away from something you're terrified of. And there are a few scenes where Bryn is just like paralyzed and has to be face to face with this alien.
Yeah,
And
great.
at the point where the alien is like regurgitating this mucus that is going to take her over through her mouth, oh, terrifying,
Yeah,
terrifying.
it's kind of like film technology reached the point where it's like, okay, we can show the grays, but don't show them for too long. They'll
Yeah.
look fake. Um, glimpses. Make sure they're moving. And in 2024, and this movie is the moment where it's like, no, leave the camera on it. In fact, zoom in. This,
Yeah.
and we don't need $100 million to make it look believable. A combination of like the technology and the cost falling, technology rising, and they were able to leave the camera on the aliens, and it's extremely satisfying
Hmm.
because you're
Yeah.
like, they've been hiding these guys from me all this time, and this is the movie that says, "Here, take your time, have a good look."
I love hearing you say that because you're a big sci fi guy. And I am usually anti, or at least lukewarm on CGI. It fucking worked in this movie.
Yeah.
It really did. And, you know, it's not all that removed from the aliens, or at least the visage of the aliens in Signs. Like,
Hmm.
it's
Oh yeah.
CGI and it's obvious it's
Especially
CGI.
especially all the shots that were full body was very Signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that film worked and this film worked. And there's 20 years in between. or whatever.
Mhm.
So 20 plus. So I mean, it's really impressive the way that they did it. And again, kudos to Kaitlyn Dever because she's acting in this opposite nothing,
Mm. Yeah.
you know?
And, she's telling 2 very heavy stories. I mean, a story about alien abduction and
Right.
alien invasion, and a story about, guilt and forgiveness. A really heavy story that's threaded throughout and works.
Yeah. We don't normally warn anymore about spoiler alerts, but spoiler alert, if you if you don't want to hear
Yeah.
more, go and watch it. But it's only at the end on the mothership as she's being studied and probed and her mind is being viewed by the aliens that we realized that she actually killed her friend. This was not an accidental thing. It's regrettable that as a kid she didn't grasp the consequences of her actions, but Bryn was an active participant in her friend Maude's death.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I invoked Super 8, which dealt with a character kind of connecting with aliens and getting closure from it. But at the end of her ordeal, not the very end when she's dropped back on Earth, but at the end of the probing, when she relived it and she's like face to face with, uh,
In the first probing of her mind,
mhm,
not the first probing, but somewhere along the lines in that she is either allowed by them or given the opportunity by them to sit down at a table with who at first I thought was her friend so that she could apologize to her friend or so that she could see her friend one last time. But then I looked closer and I saw that the person on the other side of the table is wearing the dress that she's wearing when she picks
mm,
up the rock. Those are 2 of her sitting at the table.
mhm,
She writes in perfect handwriting, "Dear Maude."
mhm.
The girl sitting on the other side of the table writes in childlike handwriting, "Dear Maude."
Mm,
And I think that she is given the opportunity to reach across the table and say, "It's
it's
okay.
okay.
We turn out okay."
Yeah. My point is the aliens either unwittingly or wittingly gave her closure.
Yeah, that's the big question though, right? Unwittingly or wittingly.
Mhm.
Um, and then I start to think like, is that what these aliens do? That they fly around looking for good stories, like someone who who really needs them? There's definitely some kind of connection between Bryn has a dollhouse or a whole town that she uses to entertain herself. The town that she can't be a part of because she's hated
Yeah.
because she killed someone from that town. So she has her imaginary town that she sort of imagines doing things in, going to a town dance and things like that. So are the aliens using this community as their dollhouse? Are they there to play?
Yeah.
And do they find in her like, oh, this one has a really good story.
Mm.
This one feels terrible for having killed her friend and she's ostracized.
Well, I think you might be giving the aliens too much credit and making them a little
Mhm.
more benevolent than they are. But they're basically taking over the world. This comes across in the film as sort of a tiny town invasion, but this is actually a major invasion, as we see when we pan up above the tree cover.
I assume that, yeah.
Yeah,
When you see those ships sort of disappearing, I assume that
right.
that goes forever. Yeah.
So here's what I think. I think at the very end, if I'm reading this correctly, she's alone again, exactly as she was at the beginning, because she's the only human among all her alien controlled townsfolk. She's happy, quote unquote, happy, and she has the illusion of popularity. But is it really happiness? And if
But that's
not, it seems
yeah,
to be happiness enough for her, for that
right.
person. And I think they might have left one or two people in each town who they're like, you know what? They won't make trouble. They're loners. They fought hard.
In some cases, you might say, "Ah, she earned it." In
Yeah.
other cases, that is so Twilight Zone.
Yes.
That is so Twilight Zone to end up in a musical number on a beautiful Mayberry set and in a gingham outfit,
hmm
knock on any door. And at that point, I said, "Wow, this was a full length modern Twilight Zone. Probably one of the best Twilight Zone interpretations I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
And that ending clinched it for me. And there is sort of an exasperation on her face, like, I'm happy now.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I
Well,
believe you.
she's happy now, mostly because all of the townsfolk resemble the little figures in her dollhouse. They're
Mm,
things that she can manipulate, she can be with. She's not intimidated by them anymore because they're neutered.
mhm. It brings up that question, like, would you rather have the truth and be sad about it or have a lie that makes you happy?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
the ending is she's got the lie and she's happy.
Right. I put it to you, that's the only kind of happiness possible for that character in the world the way it was when the movie opened. I don't know if it's that this is a warrior race, these aliens, and they, game respects game. And so they were like,
Mhm.
you took out three of our, people. Um, and she's dealing with shit. Let's, you know, or if it's kind of like we want her to almost train the townsfolk because she seems to be the big kahuna the way we leave. She's not just fitting in and
No,
kind of
no,
like
she runs
happy to
that
be a
town.
part of things. She runs
Yeah.
that town. So is she almost some kind of collaborator of
I like
sorts?
what you said about leaving one in every community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is it interesting to take over an entire town and have them interact? Sure. But what's
Yeah.
really interesting is leaving one.
Yeah.
It, just when now, when I was saying that, it reminds me in college, typical college drunken thing. Somebody drank too much and was unconscious, quote unquote, sleeping. And somebody went and got a razor, like a Bic razor, and shaved off one of this guy's eyebrows. And then they went to start on the second one. And my friend Paul leaned in and goes, wait, leave that one.
Yeah.
And everybody went, ooh, because
uh,
then he's got to deal with, do I shave it up? But anyway,
yeah.
my point being,
Dave, before you move on, our beloved high anxiety, there is a character, Norton, who had a patient at the insane asylum who was so angry he reached out and ripped off half of Norton's mustache. And then we see the character through his little cell door, and he's got only the half a mustache on his face. And he goes, "Hey, Norton, you missing something?" So, yes, it is much better to leave a character with
yeah,
only one.
yeah. So in a similar way,
Hmm.
however, just minutely similar, it's way more interesting to leave one original copy. And that would be way more informative to them on how human they could devise situations, see how she gets out of them, see if she
Hmm.
likes them, if she doesn't like them, whatever. So it makes
Yeah.
sense as an experiment. And
It's
anything that can fly here and control things with its mind and can have this many ships surrounding the Earth, this effort is trivial to them.
it,
Um,
it's the speck of sand that makes the pearl, Dave.
yeah,
Who
that's
knows?
right.
Who knows what plan they have for her?
She's the speck of sand. Yeah,
Mm,
it makes sense.
yeah. There's one scene I wanted to call out because I liked it. She's in this town. At one point, she sees her hope for getting out as taking a bus. The bus ride is horrifying. It's very creepy and very well done. It reminds me quite a lot of the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
I've never seen it.
The late great Donald Sutherland stars along with Jeff Goldblum and a bunch of other people. But basically, these characters who, when they find out that someone isn't like them, they kind of just point at them and
I
go,
remember the point
ah.
and the oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So it had that element to it. And the way that uh this alien possessed character who used to be her mailman or UPS man
Mm,
comes after her is very much like the spider alien crawling in the bus towards her.
mm,
So yeah, it's got really nice set pieces, you know.
Yeah, the whole bus scene is terrific, and there's a few. I think there's like the driver is still human, but
Right.
there's like there's two people on the bus who are human. There's two people on the bus who aren't.
It's yet another thwarted escape attempt. You know, it's very good. This film is very good at stopping her, backing up the title. No one will save you.
Hmm.
So, in closing, this film really hits both parts of the science fiction and the horror genres that it mashes up. It really leaves no stone unturned in either genre.
I think something that we can talk about that you can sort of place wherever you place it,
Hmm.
since it is a movie with little to no dialogue, you might be able to count like the sort of grunts or noises that people make.
Yeah,
There are some utterances. Uh, it's nice that they save the words for an apology.
I'm sorry,
Um,
Maude. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Maud. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah. What could you do to make those words have more impact? Um, Nothing
yeah,
at that point, because they are the words. They are the script.
right.
Um, but with that in mind, there's still a lot of sound in this movie,
Oh, great
uh,
sound
and
design.
and the sound is great. Um, Actual alien sounds, which again, a lot of borrowing,
Hmm.
but why not? Well, we've been taught over the past 25 years what aliens might sound like, and it's possible that they might be right. So there's that chittering, which
Hmm.
I don't know where the word chittering came from. I think it's an animal description.
Yes.
Um, but if you watch sci-fi movies with the subtitles on, you know that chittering is the go-to word for
Always.
anything that has that like low, like you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Or the higher. That's where the chittering comes in.
yeah, yeah, yep. So there's
Yeah.
variations on chittering, but it's what aliens do. They chitter, and there's some great visuals connected to it when they do these utterances. Their necks vibrate
Hmm.
in a really cool way.
Yeah.
There's also all the footsteps in the house, the
Mm.
running and the coming up the steps. That you see this little rubbery guy, and then you turn away and she runs, and you hear the footsteps coming, and you're like, "Yeah, those footsteps match what I just saw."
Yeah. Oh, the
Yeah.
sound design is just perfect. And I'll tell you something. When it comes to a horror movie, it's the sound that gets me. If I'm terrified at a horror movie and I'm like, "Oh my god," and I mute it, I can watch it. I
Mhm.
it's the build up, it's the loud footsteps, it's the sounds out of nowhere that really rile me up. So yeah, the
Yeah,
sound
not just
design.
for horror. You told me, like, you killed the sound when, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when the dog food can starts
Oh my
scene
god,
starts.
yeah, that brutal.
Yeah, you kill the volume on
Yeah.
that, it starts to look kinda hokey.
Yeah.
It'll save you from the fright, it really
It's
will.
it's easier to stomach. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's close on some taglines. Uh I found a couple. Here's one. Someone is about to have a very bad day.
It's incredibly vague, but I don't hate it.
Right. It's incredibly vague. Um, there's another one. There are 1.65 million home invasions a year. This one is different.
I hate that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I I I don't like anything that helps scare Americans into wanting guns. Um,
Mm,
and the home invasion is just such a rare thing. It's such an imagined thing, and it's imagined mostly by men who fantasize about protecting their family and want to buy guns so they can shoot the home invaders.
yeah.
Meanwhile, all of their smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors are out of batteries. Their bike helmets aren't they're not putting the bike helmets on, or they don't even have bike helmets, and
Right.
none of them learn CPR. There's half a dozen ways that you're 1,000 times more likely to save your family. But home invasion, now that's fucking masculine. I could
Wow.
kill some home invaders with my Glock. Now that's something I can get behind.
I am going to
Um,
learn CPR tomorrow.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
I used to use it as an argument in the bar. Someone would be like, "Hey, I own guns so I can protect my family," and people go, "Yeah, but," and I go, "Hey, he said that's it. There's no argument for that. He said he owns guns so he can protect his family. You don't get to question him on that. What you should be asking him, since we now know that he's incredibly dedicated to protecting his family, you should ask him to recommend some smoke detectors. What's the best brand?" And the guy would be like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "What's the best brand of smoke detector? What should I get?" Surely you worried about that first. It's way more likely to affect you. Where do you take your CPR courses? Where do you keep your EpiPen, and how often do you get a new one? If you can't answer all those questions and then ask them, what brand is your gun? Tell me a little bit about your gun. They can tell you 20 things about their gun because it's not to protect their family. It's
Yeah.
part of their fantasy about protecting their family. Anyway,
Wow.
I know.
All right.
I feel strongly about that. And when I saw that, when they were comparing this to home invasions, they were like, "Home invasions are scary. This is even scarier." I was like, "All right,
Mm.
let's not jump on the home invasion thing." I also
Yeah,
think
and
1.65 million is very high.
also to just as an anti-gun argument, this woman defended herself and her home using nothing but a little pointy object she had
Yeah,
on
what
her
was that? Like the
mantle.
top of a church or something? I thought it
It
was
looked
something
like
from the
it.
model, maybe.
It was probably. I think it had a stand. I thought it was could have been an old award she got as a kid
Yeah,
or something, but it was just she used it as sort of an ice pick to kill the alien.
that
Um,
alien's death was really good because you were like, "Did it work? Did it?
yeah,
Are their brains even in their head?" Like, because he
yeah,
was frozen, and you were like, "Uh-oh."
right. Yeah, and then dealing the to me the most bizarre thing about it, and you see that she's a different kind of cat. She just leaves the body there for an
Mhm.
exorbitant amount of time, and then later she checks on it because there's like a trail of like alien blood, and she looks at the gooey eye that is sort of
Mhm.
putrefying, and it's just an odd way to act. And then the aliens kind of take the body away. It's just there's so many cool things that you haven't seen before in other things, even within the borrowing from other films. So if you like science fiction, if you like horror, if you like the two mixed, this film won't let you down. It's a great
Yeah, I have to
performance and a
for
great
me,
film.
there was enough science fiction and enough heart that I could put up with the horror.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
cool. Good work as always, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we got some good chittering in.
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.